Hey, hello, it's Brent Leary. It's Monday. I think it's Monday. Every day all still seems like it's blurring, but it is Monday. It's a brand new week. And this is going to be a really cool week, what I call the BBC, which is the Brent Broadcasting Channel, not the dudes from over in the UK, although they do good stuff. But I don't think they can compete with what I'm going to do right now, which is have a really interesting conversation with Rich Rao. Rich is the VP of Small Business for Facebook. Rich, thank you for joining me, man.
Brent, great to be here with you.
So I was just telling you right before we started the broadcast when I got the email about talking to you, and I was like, wait a minute, I remember talking to a guy named Rich Rao, and then I looked back in some of the previous conversation, and I literally have not talked to you in about 7.5 years. And at the time you were at Google, now you're at Facebook, so it's really cool to talk with you now and to catch up and actually get your take on what's going on with small businesses, and the ones that you really are interacting with and serving from the Facebook point of view.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here with you. And yeah, such an interesting, such a challenging time right now for small businesses. The pandemic hit them particularly hard. And here at Facebook, we're really trying to help businesses through this time. But they are incredibly optimistic. Some of our research shows that, despite being very challenged, most of small businesses that we surveyed are optimistic about their future. And so we're excited about trying to help them.
Maybe we could take a step back, and could you just give us kind of the high level view of what small businesses Facebook is serving, kind of what you do to help them get in the business, stay in business, find customers, kind of a high level view of all that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 200 million businesses now who are using Facebook for their business, and they primarily do that to connect with their community. And that could be customers that they have today, but that could also be customers who are interested, or potential customers who are interested in what they have. And so businesses will post social media just like we do, like you do as a person. Businesses will post information about their business, engage with their community, and ultimately they want to drive sales and drive business, and that's what we help them do. We have a number of free tools that businesses can use to establish their presence, to communicate and message with businesses. Messaging has been a really big trend that we've seen. And then we have advertising, which allows them to extend their reach beyond their current community and to reach new customers.
So, how has their kind of engagement with Facebook evolved during the pandemic? How have they turned to you for helping them to get through this? It's such a tough time, and particularly small businesses are really struggling. But how are they turning to you guys to help with that?
Yeah, the primary trend that I've seen is a overall macro shift to the online channel. And there was a stat that was published that 85% of people are now shopping online. 85% of people globally. So that's where consumers are, and businesses have been shifting online, and we've seen an acceleration of some of the trends, and we're trying to help them get online. And so people are creating pages, they're creating Instagram profiles, they're doing a lot more posting about themselves. But one of the things that we've seen is this strong connection between the communities and businesses in those communities. And in fact, I'd argue that those relationships have strengthened during this time. People are trying to find a way to support small businesses, and we've seen a number of businesses open themselves up, engage more with the people who want to support them, and find a way to do business.
One of the things that I hear from small businesses is they definitely know that they have to pick up their pace when it comes to this idea of digital transformation. But in some ways, I don't know if they have totally identified not just the acceleration part, but the change of what digital transformation might have meant before COVID and what it means, well, during and what'll happen eventually after we get past it. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what you see are some of the bigger needs for their shift, how they need to shift, how they need to maybe look at engagement, how do they look at commerce a little differently than they probably had to previously.
Well, you know that expression that necessity is the mother of innovation. That's happened now, and that's how I'd summarize it. And as challenged as we've been, that has driven and sparked innovation. That I think when I talk to them, a lot of businesses say, you know what, this is something I knew I needed to do, but now I really, now's the time to do it. And the great news about it, when you talk about digital transformation, it's even broader, is you don't have to do it all in one day. And what I've seen is that businesses have taken steps forward. And before the pandemic, only 1/3 of small businesses had a website, let alone e-commerce capabilities. And so you mentioned commerce and where we're headed. We've seen just rapid innovation, across verticals, industries. Main Street is one of the things that I like to talk about because it's been this modernization of Main Street. And an example of it is, we see it across all of our towns. You being in Atlanta, I'm here in the Bay Area. Adventure Toys here in Los Altos. It's a local toy store, and they would always drive traffic to their store, to their retail presence on Main Street. And then when the pandemic hit, then they uploaded their catalog, just literally a printout of their catalog online, so people could call in the order, and then they could drive by and they'd bring it out to you. And now they have the ability to buy online. So that's an example of what's happening right now. And more broadly at Facebook, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help businesses do commerce in a lot of different ways, from reaching new customers and driving people into the store to conducting a transaction online. And Shops is an example of a product that we launched because of the pandemic, or we accelerated it because of the pandemic, that allow a business to create a whole presence right within Instagram and Facebook. And we've seen, a stat that something like 78% of shopping now is happening on mobile phones. So it's the advancement that's happening is on the consumer side, and businesses are really trying to keep up with that. And I'm really proud of how we've been able to help, but more importantly, how small businesses have been able to innovate.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we all heard about when kind of the initial stages of the shutdown happened in April, late March, April timeframe. Like online shopping for groceries went from like here to here. I mean, like almost overnight, and a majority of that shopping seems to have taken place on mobile devices. Are you seeing small businesses kind of see that as an opportunity to not only turn to commerce, but to make sure that the commerce is being driven through mobile, which is where everybody seems to be starting their shopping journey, even though we're in a pandemic and most of us are sitting in at home with about 10 big screens around us. We're sitting with these screens, but we're shopping via our mobile devices.
I think it speaks to how just pervasive mobile is and how much it will continue to be. And that, that there is, if you think about the full funnel of how you do, marketing and sales and transactions, the mobile device has become important to all parts of it. I think especially at Facebook, we saw the transition to mobile happen, and people were primarily using mobile devices to be within the app, and that's whether they're at their home or on the go. And we've seen more what we call like down funnel type movement, where instead about it just being about your brand, which is still important. I actually think that's a trend that we're going to see for into next year, but more in visitation of a product on a website, more on-site, what we call on-site within Facebook and Instagram shopping. And we've actually created new surface area and space within our apps for consumers to shop because they're on their phone, on Instagram, on Facebook, actually looking and browsing and discovering. And then it's only natural then that the transactions will happen. So I think this is a trend we're going to continue to see play out.
Another technology that was getting a lot of attention, well before the pandemic broke out, was this whole area of AI. But I saw a lot of small businesses really struggling with how AI helps them. Maybe you could talk about that in the context of how it helps them and even how it helps them right now in the midst of what we're going through.
I think it's a really important question, Brent. And AI is one of those things I like to joke that everybody wants AI, but no one really knows what it is or how necessarily to use it. But the great thing about it is that we can just look at our consumer lives and see how we're using it. So an example is when you log into Facebook and you're working through your feed, you're seeing content that's personalized to you. And then the more you interact with it, the better it gets and the better the content is. And we want to serve up what's most relevant to you. So we use it all the time in our consumer lives. And so the question is, could we utilize the same technology for the benefit of our business as well? And what we've seen from our clients is people want to use AI, but they want to have control. And so I think that's the right combination, applied AI and machine learning, but have the control to understand what it's doing, how it's doing it, and ultimately be able to have the control as to how you manage that. And so right now, your question is to like, what can you do with AI right now? There's a number of things, within any product platform, certainly within ours, that you can leverage AI today. And so for an example is automated ads. Some businesses are using this and others are still discovering it, but essentially it allows you to set up your ads, and it's not set it and forget it, but it essentially allows you to identify your objectives, supply a budget, start it with creative, and then it will do the rest. It will kind of handle running your ads for you. And so you can get better results and also save time in doing that. Messaging, as I mentioned, is a really big thing. We've seen advances in how consumers want to message with businesses. Now, the question is, how do you serve that up in a really effective way? And technology is being used to do that. Creative is another example. And I love this one because think back, 2 decades ago. What did it take to make a video ad or a TV ad? For a small business, pretty prohibitive from a technology standpoint, from a cost. But now anyone with a phone can shoot a video, and then with a few tools can really make a high quality production. So those are some of the ways that I think AI can be used today.
It is in conjunction with understanding how people react or respond to like content, whether that content is video or whether it's text or whether it's over here or over there. But a lot of small businesses, what they struggle with is creating content from a marketing and a branding perspective. How can they approach all these new technologies and platforms to help them with that? Because it was hard before the pandemic, and it seems like with more digital transactions taking place, more content flowing all over, it's harder to get people's attention and keep it long enough to turn that attention into an interaction, into a transaction, into a subscription, into a long-lasting relationship. So
Mm.
how can they kind of approach branding with all that's going on to really help them not only in the long term, but help them, get their word out and get the right uh, kind of the way that they want to be viewed out in the right way.
Branding for a small business is incredibly important. In fact, I think it's going to become even more important. Now, the challenge that a lot of small businesses perceive and face is that, if you were to say build a brand marketing campaign or build your brand, it's kind of a daunting thing. And, businesses can be a little bit nervous about, okay, how do I know if the creative I produce is going to be, is going to resonate? It's going to be good enough. It's going to be high production quality and so forth. And the great news about, and it's happening right now during the pandemic, is that it goes back to what I was saying before, that consumers want to support businesses. Like we really want to support, and it's really about the people who run these businesses. And so what I've seen is businesses are really having success when they show their authentic self. When they just talk, when they just get on camera or get in the shot, they sit with their products, they showcase their services, they talk about who they are, and it's beautiful. An example of it is, and it's all industries. It doesn't have to be the most exciting thing in the world, but Tom Mulholland, he's a grocery store owner, runs a grocery store called Mulholland Groceries in Malvern, Iowa. It's a small town, and he essentially went online and was doing Facebook Lives where he would talk, to the camera and talk to his audience about this product. And he had never done it before. And people were giving him tips. They were showing him how to do it, and they were rallying around him. And he's, showcasing his products. He's slicing his meat, and you can see his love for the product come through. And that's the type of connection that is authentic. And, I think there's no substitute for that. So I actually think we're going to learn a lot from this period, and businesses are going to have stronger relationships with their customers.
Yeah, it seems to me that it is a very difficult period for everybody, definitely including small businesses. But I've seen a lot of creativity, a lot of uh, innovation, and a lot of focus on. I think you used the term, empathy, and creating a deeper connection, or deeper an opportunity for a deeper engagement that goes beyond, like, traditional transactional. You give me this amount, I'll give you this product. You're seeing an opportunity to connect at a deeper level. How can small businesses leverage some of these tools to build that kind of deep connection? Because that's the kind of relationship that allows you to usually to weather these hard times.
Yeah, it's interesting when March, the pandemic hit, we saw this draw towards small businesses. And then as well, during the summertime, we saw a huge interest in businesses, or people supporting Black-owned businesses. The pandemic has hit Black-owned businesses particularly hard. It's also hit women-owned businesses particularly hard, and the community rallied around them. In fact, we saw 3.5 million people join a Facebook group to support Black-owned businesses, and we created a
Yeah.
program, hashtag Buy Black Friday, just to help bring the community and together. We saw consumers and businesses who naturally wanted to come together, and we as a platform wanted to support that. So we created a program, and every Friday was a sort of celebration of the community who wanted to come together, and it really resonated. It really helped people and businesses connect. And I think what my advice would be to businesses, all businesses at this stage, is continue. They have this optimism, which I think is a great example for all of us in large businesses, small businesses alike. And I think showing that optimism, in your creative, and there's nothing like a video, a story, a Facebook Live, which talking about your challenges, but also showing how you're optimistic, what you're doing, how you're changing, and it encourages people to want to follow you. And a good example of this is a business called Nora's Macaroons. So the business basically made macaroons for special events, for weddings, and of course, when the pandemic hit, all of that shut down. So what do they do at Nora's Macaroons? Well, they went on Facebook. They just started to share, about their macaroons, just their love for the product. And what they found was the community helped take them in a new direction. The community also at home, they wanted to learn how to make the macaroons. So they were willing to sign up and pay for a class. And so she created, using one of the new tools we launched called Paid Online Events, she ran a whole event and she charged for it. And they made as much money in one event as they make typically an entire month. So that's an example of an evolution that really was derived from the interaction with their community. And I think that's an opportunity to kind of not know. Unpredictability can sometimes be seen as a bad thing, but uncertainty can also provide opportunity, and opportunity for a business. And I think that the more you're engaging with your community, the more you're going to find those opportunities.
Yeah, that's really great. I think building a community around your company is becoming even more important, and maybe has been revealed to be extremely important with what's going on currently right now. Well, you talk about small retailers. Let's talk about restaurants. They're having a very difficult time. Do you have any predictions for how things turn around, and particularly in that industry? What can they do? We've seen kind of the ability to do touchless service, or kind of combine digital online more effectively with bricks and mortar. But are there any trends or predictions about how those kinds of businesses can give themselves the best opportunity to succeed going forward?
Well, I think, and you alluded to it, but we are seeing, this advancement and innovation, and retailers, restaurants, and my view of this is that we are going to move to a permanently augmented state in a better sense. Um, Excuse me, and leave businesses in a better state going forward. It is about right now weathering the storm and trying to do as much business as you can. But, we're really retail 1.0 and Main Street 1.0 is about driving retail traffic, driving traffic to your store or driving traffic to your restaurant. I think what 2.0 is about, is really around managing your customers, driving more customers, and then driving engagement around them. And then your presence, your retail presence, your online presence, your social media presence are various channels to then nurture that and foster that. And it's not only about building new channels, but it's about integrating the channels as well. And we talked a bit about social media and how you can leverage that. But what we're seeing with restaurants, and you mentioned, is innovation where you can order online and then you can pick it up, touchless. Even if you're not ordering, but you can see the menu, you can call it in, and you know what I've seen is, and I don't know if you've experienced this personally, but the actual pickup and takeout has gotten much better, and it's gotten more seamless, and it's gotten faster, and it's gotten more efficient. And I think that's going to provide a channel, a lasting channel, going forward. But right now, especially with the latest spike and just what's happening, it's really challenging. I think a lot of businesses are just trying to weather the storm.
When you think about the permanency of some of these shifts, which ones do you see, becoming solidified and changing the way that we did things? And which ones do you see potentially just, like you said, just to weather the storm kind of changes that when we kind of see things getting back to whatever normal will be, they may fall by the wayside. How can we get small businesses to concentrate on the ones that are permanent shifts while still managing the things that are weathering the storm kind of things?
I there's always going to be some things, some things we do miss today, and we do want to go back to dining inside restaurants. We do want to go back to going through and visiting a store and being part of that and shaking hands and so forth. Um, but I think what's the things that will last are the innovations that are producing consumer benefit. And and what I think it's really why I'm so optimistic about it is that it's producing customer benefits at greater efficiencies and at greater margins than in the past.
Mhm.
So the online, if you think about your retail presence versus your online channel, I think businesses right now are starting to say, okay, well, how much of my business is happening online? And what we've seen is there's a critical junction point, inflection point at about 25%. Then when you get to about 25% of your sales happening online, this is on average across industries, that you can still experience growth year on year. Um, and so I think there is a critical junction point that happens at that. But I think going forward, what we're going and then if you could line up the cost of doing business online versus in your retail presence, you start to then look at your investments a little bit differently and you start to shape them. And as you do more online, you can get more efficient. And so I think there will be an opportunity for, going forward, maybe you're not going to have the majority of your sales happening online, but if you can have 25, 30, 40%, and it's at a really high margin, meaning your incremental costs are low, that means you can reinvest it back into your business, back into your products, back into your service, back into your retail presence as well. And so I'm hopeful once we come out of this, we're going to see a bit more of a growth phase and potentially higher margins, which will fuel, continuous growth.
And last week, you guys put out a report, kind of the state of small business, and I got a chance to take a glimpse at it. But it would be great for if you could give us some of the high level findings that came out of that, because you literally it's just pretty much right off the presses here.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. We have been, publishing a report basically since the pandemic started, really to help shine the light as to what's happening with small businesses. We all care, we all see economic data, but we want to provide some richer insights. Given the perspective that we have so many businesses on the platform as to what they're facing and how they're dealing with it. And I think there are three major headlines. The first is that it really is a rough road to recovery. Um, we saw businesses throughout the various phases. We just actually launched our sixth, what we call wave of the report, and we just do this, over time, so we can see the progress. But we saw a number of businesses close. We have seen in the last report, we saw the closure rate fell to 15%. So 15% of businesses are closed, which is down 11 points from 26%. So that was good.
No.
But with a spike back up and more closures, I would imagine that's going to go in the opposite direction. So we're in that range of anywhere between 15 to 26% of businesses are just unable to do business right now. Half of them have reported lower sales, and so they're struggling and they're having to cut back on their employees, on their payroll costs, on their overall costs. We did see some of the government injection of funding help with that, but that was only for a limited duration of time. So that's the first point. It's a rough road to recovery. The second key headline is there has been inequality in part because of what's happening at home. Female-owned businesses, as talked about, have been hit harder, and they're spending more time on domestic tasks at home. More so than their male counterparts. We also saw Black-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses hit harder, but they are also responding. But here's the good news, and I'll close out the good news on this one, which is
Thank you. We need the good news here.
56% of respondents confirm they're either optimistic or very optimistic about their future. So more than half of small businesses are optimistic about their future. And the way I like to think about it, Brent, is this is not the first challenge that small businesses have seen. Businesses who have gotten to this point have had to face challenges. Maybe nothing in particular like this, but I'm sure they faced equally hard challenges, and they believe in themselves. And the more that we believe in them as a community, as customers, I think that's fueling their optimism as well.
Have you been surprised, or are there any kind of things that have surprised you about small businesses as they've, you know, worked with you and told you what they're dealing with? Have you been surprised by anything with those interactions when it comes to small businesses?
Well, I spoke about their optimism and resilience, and I'm just that's the thing that stands out the most. Just how much they are, how quickly they can move, how much they're willing to do to support their business. I think the other thing that's really caught my attention is that we've had what have typically been seen as local businesses start to really sell globally, and this is fascinating. And it's powered by what's happening online. But I talked to a garlic farmer in what was it? I think it was in Nebraska, basically selling her products, and not just garlic, but all sorts of products based off of oils and so forth, selling across the country. And I met with a business in Spain who basically is selling their apparel to businesses in the United States. It's actually produced in the United States, but they're actually they hold a global inventory. They're selling back to customers here. So that, and then I met with one business in Mexico where they're actually selling their, it's a restaurant, and they're transacting, they're conducting orders online in a very small town, and they're selling it within a wider radius than they would have expected, and they're delivering it.
Mhm.
So I think what would have been most surprising is how these local businesses, what you consider to be very local, have all of a sudden expanded their reach, and in some cases going global.
It sounds like, the bad situation of pandemic has kind of forced them into becoming a more digital first kind of business, and that has opened up the possibilities of reaching prospective customers well beyond what they were doing, when they were operating in the pre-pandemic, which was mostly, location based. Now, as they transition to create a digital component to their business, they're finding that, wow, there's other prospective customers that they're able to reach, and that's actually becoming one of the positives out of this whole thing.
I, I think it's exactly right. And, I think one of the beautiful things about it is when small businesses do the things that only small businesses can do, as they're expanding their reach. They, a hand signed card that indicates how much they appreciate it and shows a relationship. there's a business on the East Coast that I just serendipitously found one day on Instagram, and then I was in the area. I was actually probably within 50 miles. I was like, I got to go to this shop. It's called the City Workshop in Maplewood, New Jersey. And I remember going there. I met the owners. They were, formerly they worked on Wall Street. They wanted, this is their passion. It's a men's clothing store, Roger and Josephine. And I met with them, and they were just great. Hit it off with them, and bought a pair of jeans. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I want to support. How are they doing? What are they doing on Instagram? What are they? How's their business going? And I remember I bought a shirt from them, a T-shirt. It was no big deal. It was just a T-shirt. But they sent me the T-shirt, and in the box was a card, and it said, "Rich, really appreciate you representing us on the West Coast. Thanks for repping us on the West Coast, Roger." And it was that sort of type of thing where, he didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that. But when I got that, I was like, I know that they appreciate my business and that there's a shared relationship and there's something that we have. And then the product and the transaction is a means, of a relationship between a business and a customer. And so, as my advice as businesses are starting to really acquire customers all over, foster that relationship as if the person is right there in your local community.
One question before I ask you the biggest question of all at the end of this. Are you seeing small businesses use one of the two channels, whether it's they focus more on Facebook or versus more on Instagram, or are they kind of incorporating how they leverage each channel in a more integrated fashion?
What I've seen is that businesses will start with typically one of Facebook, Instagram, and increasingly WhatsApp,
Mm-hmm.
and especially internationally and globally. And then they start with one. They'll create an IG profile or a Facebook page or a business presence on WhatsApp. They'll then start to open it up, and then they quickly realize that there are similar audience, but also different audiences on each of the products. And so they'll then move and they'll kind of create their presence across multiple platforms, multiple of the products. And our tools allow you to do that pretty easily now. Advertising is a good example. Once you go to advertise, you can just kind of check the box and opt in to advertise across our platforms, and it'll optimize for you. So based upon your product, your audience, your ad, it'll actually spend your dollar and find the best audience for that money you're investing to drive the most value. And so that's one thing we've seen, that a lot of businesses, they start with one, but then they rapidly expand, and they see the benefits and the efficiency of scale that comes along with that.
That's cool, and I'm assuming because it's a pretty low cost of entry for advertising. Are you seeing even like more experimentation between small businesses saying, I never really thought about doing advertising, but maybe it's time, and maybe I could use just try it with a couple of bucks and try it out.
We have seen an increase in experimentation with using our products, including advertising. We've seen people engage a lot more with their free tools, and messaging is one of the trends that was already been in place before the pandemic. That accelerated, so more messaging, as you can imagine, between businesses. It used to be you would call the phone and they would pick up in the store, but now messaging is this sort of ever present channel that's available to you. And then advertising. It's interesting because anyone with a few dollars and with a mobile phone can create an ad. So the barriers to entry are very low. And it's one of those things where what we see, typically businesses will try ads for 60 days, 90 days, and then they start to see they optimize their creative, they optimize their ads, personalization, they optimize their objectives, and then they start to see the gains and the returns kind of come through. And so it doesn't have to take a full year of investment before you see the return. And the attribution to which you can measure the results is one of the key differentiators. That's kind of how it's different than doing a radio ad or not. All forms of advertising can be very effective for you, but one of the unique things about digital advertising and on Facebook is you can measure and see pretty quickly how things are going. And yeah, we've seen that work for a lot of businesses.
Rich, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking time to do this. where can people learn about a little bit more about the report or any of the other things that we talked about today?
Yeah, so we've got a wealth of information available online, and you can go to facebook.com/business, and that'll tell you if you're a small business a lot about what we have to offer, and we also have, particularly for businesses who are trying to, right now, I know we're right thick in the middle of the holiday season, but we actually launched some content specific for the holidays, and you can go check that out at facebook.com/season of support, where we've got a whole bunch of modules to help businesses learn how to get online, manage their presence, and drive transactions.
And the final question, and the most important question of the day: who is your favorite football team?
All right, now we're talking football. Well, I'm a Cowboys fan,
Oh,
which has been a tough season. It's a tough season in the NFC East, but Brent, last week or yesterday, I don't know what happened. 3 out of the 4 teams won, so I don't know what's happening this year.
yeah.
Crazy.
It was the did we have some kind of a lunar eclipse yesterday or something? I mean, everything lined up for the NFC. I hate to say it, but we've been calling it the NFC least for a while now. But you know, I typically I I Dallas. I have a pretty bad history with the Cowboys, considering when I was a little kid in the '70s, they ruined many NFC Championship game for me. But I've actually kind of moved on, and so I'm not as upset now. If you had said you were a Patriots fan, we probably would have had a different ending to this discussion. But I'm
So,
glad.
can I ask you a question, Brent? Then,
Sure, absolutely.
so yeah, what do you think about the Rams' chances this year?
Oh, don't do that to me, man. I'm very superstitious, and I anybody who knows me knows, like, when the Rams are on, I go into what I call the no comment zone. I don't take calls. I'm not on social. I don't talk. And if they win that game, then I'll do the same routine over and over. So I'm in the middle of, I'm not saying a thing. I we are in a tough division. We're tied with the Sea Hags, is what I like to call them. The Seahawks. And so, I'm just trying to get through the season without losing it. That's my official comment, man. Now, let me ask you one. Who do you think is going to come out of the East? I mean, the Giants, I thought, had a little grip on it. They lost, and then everybody else won. So technically, every team in the NFC East is still in it.
Is still in it, yeah, which is unbelievable to think about. And yeah, I don't know. I watched that Giants game, and I went to Texas, so I was hopeful Colt McCoy would get in and win another game, but Daniel Jones kind of struggled and all of that, and then the Eagles coming from nowhere, Jalen Hurts, and but I gotta say, I think Washington is my favorite right now. Anything can happen, but I think that defense just gives them a chance every single game. So I'm gonna have to go with the Redskins, my rival, the Redskins.
I know. Well, as long as Alex Smith is back, I think he might have a shot. But if he's banged up a little bit, that might change the equation. But we shall see. I'm just glad that we have a chance to win our division. I'm just going to leave it at that. But hey, this has been great. Love catching up. It's we cannot let another 7.5, 8 years go by without us doing that.
I agree. So glad to be on with you, Brent. Thank you so much. Great to be here with you.
Thank you. And I will be back tomorrow with a really cool. We're actually talking about privacy and data and all that kind of stuff with the folks at Zoho. So stay tuned for that tomorrow on, as I said, the BBC Brent Broadcasting Channel, not the other guys, although they do pretty good stuff. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.